Thanks for being here with us this evening. I'm Jinchi, and together with my team, Charles, Vikram, and Vinod, we welcome you to Troublemakers Assembly organized by the Design School at Taylor's University. This is our second e-conference of this year's Troublemakers Assembly series. To all Taylor staff, there are 2 registrations you have to do. One is in HRSS, if you have not already done so, and the other is the registration for your attendance here. For that, we will provide the link towards the end of the session. For other university staff and students whose institutions require proof of attendance, you may write to us. Troublemakers Assembly is a gathering to honor and learn from the inspirational work done by an array of engaging personalities who have, in their own unique ways, made a mark in society through creative problem solving. This series of e-conferences aimed at creating audience immersion through an active and meaningful content with the end objective of inspiring the audience to become their very own change makers. There is a survey we have prepared for you so we can get your suggestions for future improvement. The survey link will be provided in the feed after the talk. Don't forget to like and share our page and our live feed, yeah? Now, let me formally introduce our speaker for this month, Miss Indrani Kopal, an award-winning documentary filmmaker, a Fulbright scholar, and a former video journalist at MalaysiaKini.com. Indrani is also our fellow colleague at Taylor's University's School of Media and Communication. The title of the presentation this evening is From Family Disgrace to Family Pride. Hopefully, who knows? So before I pass the session over to the speaker, I encourage everyone to post at least one question for Indrani in our live feed during or towards the end of her presentation, as we would love to hear from each of you. Thank you. Now let us welcome Miss Indrani.
Thank you, Jinchi, Vinod, Vikram, and Charles, who are the 4 people that I see on my screen. So I don't see anyone else, which is good. Again, I'm Indrani Kopal, and I'm a documentary filmmaker and Taylor's lecturer. And I guess today I would like to tell you a few personal stories about what it's like to have strange and unusual dreams, like want to be a filmmaker or film director. As an Indian woman, back in the 90s in Malaysia, during an era where handphone, Facebook, and Netflix hasn't existed yet, at least not in my world, and I let you be the judge if this very controversial title of the sharing fits the narrative that I'm about to share. And personally, I believe some of you might share my journey, some of you may not, might find it extremely strange, but I grew up in a very conventional, conservative, and extremely traditional lower middle class Indian family in Setapak, Kuala Lumpur. A suburb with the Lensing buses and hot spring. Both my parents were civil servants, high school administrative, school clerks. So as you could imagine, my first ambition was to become a teacher. That was like the thing that you want to do, right? And while with both parents working, my 3 siblings and I were raised by my party, my grandmother and my chittis, all my 3 chittis and my mama, my parents' siblings, and an invisible village of our relatives. It was a household where when you get your first period, your family informs the entire village for the puberty party or coming of age ceremony. Looking back, I still don't know why they had to inform the entire neighborhood that I've started menstruating. I don't think they know either. They just did, because that's what everyone did. And it's probably made sense in the 19th or 20th century in India. But I don't know what it means today, you know. Like that, many things my loved ones did, because that's what everyone did. But as you grow older, you then take on their dreams as well, that they try to live through you because they didn't get a chance to do it. I guess what I'm trying to get at, I suppose, sometimes in the name of love, we allow people that we love dearly to rob us of our dreams. And I did that. I did that because I love my parents. I love everybody who loved me, who raised me for a period of time. And it worked for me for a while, until one day I just couldn't live with myself. You know, they lived by a certain formula that was important to them, and it almost compulsory in that invisible village to maintain the status quo. All A's in PMR SPM, must get into the local university, choose one of the world famous, most respected profession, doctor, lawyer, engineer, accountant, and bankers. For some reason, I'm not sure how banking line got into that. Buy a house, buy a car, horoscope matching suitor, and by hook or crook, must get married by 23, latest by 25. So if you watch any Tamil movies or mega serials, this is the same formula, same narrative. The script is similar, page by page. So from the very beginning, my narrative, my personal narrative was different. It wasn't normal to begin with. And I was really eager to write my own. But you can't, though, not as long as you live in that village and surrounded by people who believe in certain, formula. So I remember my father, my late father, Mr. Kopal, told me, as long as you live with us in this house, you live by my rule. After you get married, then you do whatever you want. At least I've done my job. You're no longer my problem. Now we have to pause for a moment in that line. You're no longer my problem. You're somebody else's problem. That is your in-laws' problem. So you got to be someone's problem. Either be your parents' problem or your in-laws' problem. That was the narrative as a young woman growing up, right? So great line, great line. A lot of mega serials had the similar line, and they even say, "Don't get married to the man I choose, I'll hang from the fan." Also great line. You'll find them in many movies. So I looked around me. It was the same story. My friends, my schoolmates, same scripts, to get them married off, and then they can do whatever they want after that. Why? Because we women have uterus and boys don't, if you know what I mean. So as you could imagine, I'm 40 today, I'm unmarried, and I have lived out of my parents' home since for almost 20 years now. So you could imagine what a nightmare I would have been from a very traditional family. So you see, if I had conformed to the life's formula or script they wrote for me, I would have seen myself as a huge failure. And the only way I could redeem myself is to get married into a good family, raise good babies, and raise them well, and send them to the good university, lawyer, doctor, engineer, good professions, and they get married and they have babies. So then I would have redeemed myself. But the thing is, I wasn't finished with my own story. It can't stop right there, I didn't get all A's. I didn't go to local university. I didn't even like any of this one profession. I wasn't smart enough for them to begin with. So what about other dreams about you want to see the world? You want to study what you love. You want to spend 4 years studying what you really want to study and finding out who you are, finding out your voice. What are you like in the world that's unfamiliar to you? So I was longing for answers to all these questions, why we do what we do. So my story hasn't begun yet. So I would eventually walk out of my parents' home, much to my parents' disappointment, and I would meet a wonderful man at the age of 22, who would then become my partner in crime, and together we would discover our passion for filmmaking and storytelling. We would then become colleagues at Malaysia, who I would tell hundreds of marginalized Tamil Indian stories, from temple demolishment to death in police custody, displacement, poverty, stateless and undocumented children, the Penang lodging issues, the communists who were pushed out of the country and live in Chulabon village in Thailand, displacement, modern day slavery, who also would introduce me to Udaya Kumar from Hindrav a year before the famous 2007 rally. And we did that for 6 years. And whom I would leave after 13 years of a beautiful relationship to pursue my master's degree in New York. At that time, the family and the village has given up on me. But then something magical would happen. The game changer would happen. And I would be in every newspaper after the Cannes France Film Festival. And I realized it was my turn to to not continue to write and design my life, also co-write it with my family. I would then bring them back into my life. I would allow them to come in, and I would not always run away, This is very important from a design perspective, since the conference is organized by the design school. See, I caught up with this imagination that what if we don't believe it's written, it's predestined, and you actually can design what you want. You literally can plan everything you want to be. So every event, every year, you would then do something that would lead you to another step. You would do it very well because this step would lead to another, this step would lead to another. I still remember at the core of it, I still remember my grandmother told me, Indra, they can take everything away from you. Everything, your car, your house, your husband can leave you, can divorce you, your family can unfriend you, they can today. But there's one thing no one can take away from you, is education. So I knew my only ticket out was education. But to study what I want, though, not something that I don't comprehend, So I had to really disappoint a lot of people along the way. So what happened after the Khan and after Game Changers that I would, the village started calling my father, Mr. Gopal, I saw your daughter in the newspaper. You must be very proud, huh? These are very people that my parents would dread to see in weddings, dread to go to a family event and to answer, what happened to your daughter? She left her. She's gone now. I cannot imagine what they would have gone through, what I've put them through in a very selfish pursuit of my dreams. A dream that only after 15, 20 years, they would then recognize it was worth all the pain we went through, And the reward is I would come back from Cannes to renew my visa if I go back again to New York to study. We had the first premiere of Game Changer in Malaysia. And the Fulbright office, all the officers from Fulbright will come. A lot of filmmakers locally came to support that premiere. And my parents were in the front seat. And that night, first time in many years, I'm actually staying went back to my parents' home and I'm staying with them that night. My parents would call me and say, Indra, you're probably onto something. We are very proud of you. You do whatever you want, lah. You marry whenever you want to, whoever you want to. I think we believe in you. But if I had fallen and conformed to a formula that was only visible to their eye, but whatever experience they had, I wouldn't have seen that moment that night. I wouldn't have experienced that with them. So this idea of they would raise you very well for a period of time, give you every education you need, every foundation.
Education is the process of facilitating learning.
That's my Siri. Sorry, that was Siri's trying to join the conversation. That they raise you with everything they have, give you every possible foundation, and then at some point you have to pause and say, it's now your turn. It's your turn to design. It's your turn to raise yourself with the best knowledge you have at that period of time. So when I teach, my students would come up to me and they were probably the best kids in class. They probably do so well in their video assignments or filmmaking assignments. And then I would say, wow, you will go on and be a very good director. No, miss, I love my mom and they've invested in me. I have to go back and be what my mom wanted to be. My mom had a dream that I would become an accountant or doctor or lawyer. And they would bury everything, what they want to be, because they love their parents. And all they want to do is to make them happy because they've raised them and loved them for 20 years. So I look at that, I was thinking, wow, I'm not a parent, I don't know. Is that pressure healthy? I don't know. But can that be a different narrative, like asking them what they want to do? Because here I want to share a story about a documentary that I did, 2007. She's My Son is a short 15-minute documentary it's probably the first documentary that I produced while I was still working in Malaysia as a video journalist. So I remember meeting a young girl in midnight in Chalkit, and many people that we interviewed. It's an issue-driven story about discrimination about with the transgender community in Malaysia. So I sat with many people, but there's one girl who shared her story about how she and her mother would go for shopping. She and her mother would do makeups together. They would do a lot of things together, and the level of acceptance in the family. This is a time where you hear about when you're not normal, they'd rather you not be part of the village or family, they cast you away, especially in our community. They'd rather you just go somewhere else, live, just don't attend family events with us, don't be in the family, can't have you to taint this family. Her story and my story wasn't very different. So I actually convinced her to be the subject, the main protagonist of my story, and share her story with me. And she would call mom and get permission, and we would put this proposal together, pitch to FFF, Commerce, for Freedom Film Festival, and my pitch would get through as one of the 3 stories that we would produce for that year. So I think Star newspaper did an interview, and we came out in the paper with her photo and my photo and all the stories that we're exploring. Then she got a call from family from the village. Said, look, your elder sister is going to get married. We just found a suitor for her. If you go on this film and tell your story, you'll be a disgrace to our family. I think the suitor's family will leave her and go, and I can never see her getting married one day. So don't do this to us. If you love us, if you love your sister, you would not go on the film. So both her mom and her would take the train from Penang, come and meet me in KL and tell them that we have family pressure, so we can't be in your film. They would pull out. This is after I got the grant to produce the film. But then she would introduce me to another wonderful person who would then share her story with her mother. I wanted the story of family acceptance because family is your foundation. If your wild dream is nurtured by your family, then do you have to rebel? Do you have to then put all the fight to fight for freedom, to fight to pursue your dream, to fight to pursue your ambition? Do you have to put that kind of fight that I had to put before I can be accepted in the first place? I had to prove myself over and over and over and over again to really be in a place where they can be proud of you. What if that can be fast forward, but then, I wouldn't have a story, right? It's sad, I think. It's also very hopeful because eventually the family came around. Eventually they were proud of me. Eventually they said, wow. I remember my auntie told me, my brothers forced me to stop from going to school to raise their kids so the boys then can go to school. So many young women, probably if you're watching this, if you are Cal-born, upper middle class, urban young girl, you couldn't even connect to this story. But if you're growing up in the plantation, if you're growing up in a very similar setting, outskirts somewhere, any parts of the world, some part of this story will resonate too, because that story still is reality for many women out there. When I'm running around with camera, they couldn't go and tell anybody what exactly I'm doing. It wasn't a proud moment. I didn't have a house, I didn't have a car. The idea that you're not married at a certain age was very shameful thing because they couldn't fulfill their promise to that pressure to the village. So I think to stand up for you, the very people who are going to stand up with you should be your immediate family members. And then once you're protected by this very core foundation, very core people, then everybody else would not dare say a thing. It's your parents. So that night when my mom and dad told me, you go and do what you want, Lendra. We'll speak up for you. We'll defend you. You're my daughter. You get to do anything you want. Had that said that before, I would have saved myself a lot of many nights of sleepless nights and crying days and very hurtful moments. But I had to fight for everything. But then I would eventually make my late father and my mother very proud. But it would take 10 years for that to happen. So I guess a lot of stories that I explore in my life are women who lived very unconventional ways like this, who have very interesting stories where they're all troublemakers in their life. They all wanted to go against destiny or predestined idea and wanted to rewrite their story or redesign their story, write their own script. But then I agree, there are moments when life will give you an unexpected episodes or a scene or moment that you have to now act on. But then you're already comfortable in your own skin, you're comfortable with your own self, you know who you are, um, you know how you would be in the world. Because all of us are searching for that voice. All of us are constantly asking, what do I want? What would make me happy? And I realized happiness wasn't something that I would achieve, it was something that I would constantly pursue. So what I'm doing now was important. I cannot do something else and expect a different outcome. I had to hurt my parents then to pursue a dream so that I know later I can redeem myself back with them or they can redeem. So we all come together. Eventually, I would sit. I remember when I came back from US, 2016, when I returned, I sat down with the whole family, all auntie, all my chitti, all my mama, everyone were there, and I was I put up all my Grand Canyon photos. So this is Grand Canyon. See how it looks like. This is, and they were like, wow, look at her, how she did. But you know something? I didn't do anything different than what my grandmother did when she boarded the Rajula, SS Rajula from Chennai at the age of 14 to come to Malaysia. At least I came back, She didn't get to go back to her family. She didn't get to return. She stayed, left everything she knows. She came to Malaysia. If she didn't come here and start the second generation, third generation of Malaysian Indian family from my family, I wouldn't be here, isn't it? So how is that what I did was different than what she did? I followed her footsteps, literally, but I returned. So I guess that's the foundation for every stories I explore. Why I did what I did, and when people look at you and say, "Wow, Indra, you've done well," but I have a story. Not a lot of people were happy along the way. There's a lot of disappointment, a lot of hurt. So every story that I explore will go back to my own experience. So I am no different than stories I explore, women that I explore to tell my story. So if you think I'm bold, dark, and female, my protagonists in every story are bold, dark, and they're female. Whether they're white, black, brown, they're all dark. So dark inside. They're so cold stone inside. When, before they could get to shine. I guess that would be from me.
Wow. That was an intriguing and insightful session, Indrani, into Tamil cultural Tamil culture, and also the immigrant story towards the end. That was quite intriguing session. I think for a lot of ethnically Indian people, they would be listening to this and be thinking like, I've heard this before, I felt this before. But for a lot of other people, it would have been like a shock in some cases, right? For some of the prevailing issues that you were mentioning, regarding the marriage, or the force, the amount of pressure that you have, that you have to go through, and the fight that you have to put up in order to do what you want to do. Yeah, because I can look back and see my own sister at that point in time, closeted in her house and not being allowed to go out. Whereas I was with my friends, my Chinese friends, my Malay friends, at either pubs or parties or whatever, and they were all the same age as me, or even my sister, and they were out, but my sister's closeted at home, right? Yeah. Which I think brings back a lot of memories as well for those of us who have gone through it or seen it from a distance but not experienced it. I think being a woman and being female in an Indian family can be a handicap, especially at that point in time. But I think you've managed to take that and turn it around and challenge it, and which is why you are where you are today. With that, let me go on to my first question.
Sure.
So why are there so few females and fewer still with your ethnic background in this industry here in Malaysia?
I don't know. Actually, I guess you have to look at the industry in a very different scope. I personally know now there are a rising number of female film directors, but from the past, in filmmaking industry, women have always taken on editor's role, producer's role, behind the scene roles, rather than the leading director's role or the cinematographer's role. These are always very masculine roles that men always have taken up, but women in the Malaysian, because we have a TV station locally, and if you go there, you will find a lot of many female Indian producers, Indian editors, young girls. But then to take on that role, it's a big deal. You have to have a system, you have to have a background, you have to have that story even. So I think.
So there seems to be a ceiling there that they are unable to penetrate.
Industries are still very young. Industries are still very small, and they have three big ethnic. And I think at this point, rather than fighting for Malaysian Indian female directors, I would fight for female directors as a whole. I would want. That's why I tell my young students, especially female students, the first choice always to be an actress, to be in front of screen. Well, that's great. It's wonderful. Go for it. But then I want them to eventually explore, if you thought about maybe behind the scene, being the person behind the camera, being the person behind the storytelling, the script itself, and to be the director itself or direct the story and have even all-female crew if you want to be. But I think male-female, the idea that you're willing to see the perspective differently, you're willing to see that we both bring different gaze, different perspective to the story. I still remember, my personal experience would be, I still remember in Casa Rhythm, when I wanted to pass the story on to a different group in the US, to a couple of young men. And I want them to, because they have the connections, they have the contacts, I want them to take the film to a place that I couldn't take as an outsider in the US, right? And they had all the right connection. We're going to pitch it to Tribeca. And they were great storytellers, don't get me wrong. They were wonderful storytellers. One of them was even my colleague. But when it came back after re-edit when it came back to me, every scene I was watching, I realized I disappeared. My gaze disappeared. My perspective about my protagonist disappeared. It was very masculine. It was very different. It was very broad. It was very issue-driven than personal story-driven. So, and I realized it wasn't my story. But it's a great story, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't my story.
Okay.
Then I realized we both bring different things to the story that sometimes it's important that although it will not be a successful film, I still want to retain my voice in there.
So,
I still want to go ahead.
Yeah, so what, I mean, coming back to the question, what would it take then for more females to take this leading role in production? I mean, as a director, as leading director or leading roles in these areas, what would it take?
Very big question, Vinod. It has to come down to being a film director is my field, so it's one thing, but I also want them to take on different roles like a sound designer or a Foley artist. Those are also still very masculine area. Mm-hmm. And an animator or VFX graphic artist, that's also a very masculine area. So what it takes is they have to ask the individual what they really want to do. I have a problem if they want to be that, but then they didn't get a chance to climb politics or not encouraged by their colleague, that they don't land in that position. But then if they don't have desire to do that, then there's nothing else to do. The opportunities now are out there. Nothing stops anybody from pursuing their dream, but you have to expose them. So to me, it's the exposure. So right now, students can look at me and say, Miss, I want to be like you. My students will say, Miss, I want to be like you.
Yeah. So I think the more the spotlight is on people like yourself, the more the awareness is there, and hopefully
more people come out and tell their stories.
Exactly.
More women come out and tell their stories. More of them should get more publicity and given space to speak.
Okay.
Given space to share.
All right. So I'll just move on to the next question. This is for our younger audience out there. For
Yeah.
our audience, could you explain what a Fulbright scholar is and what it takes to be one?
That's very subjective, so I don't want to get into that because I don't think before I got Fulbright scholarship, I don't think I was made or my career was part of Fulbright's target. So in the past, before I got Fulbright scholarship, those who received Fulbright scholarship because their parents got Fulbright scholarship, and then they would groom their kids to become Fulbrighter. In the US, Fulbright is a big deal.
Yeah.
Every parent who are Fulbrighter, they feel very it's a very elite status for them, So
Yeah.
they would want, because I'm a Fulbrighter, so I'm part of this community, so I want my kids to be, so they actually groom you to take on that, to get all A's in your exams, to score everything high, and pick a field that you would actually get selected into, mostly science and medicine and engineering, and so none of what I did was fitting into that category. I didn't think a Fulbright ever thought about giving Fulbright scholarship to filmmakers, not in Malaysia at least. So when I did apply, they were probably surprised because they probably no one else would have applied before. They would be surprised to say, "Oh wow, we have a filmmaker." But what did help me was my work, the work I did before my application went in. So you don't just finish your undergrad and go and go to work and then you apply Fulbright to pursue your education in the US. It's not something that happened ABC. You have to have a lived experience. You have to have something really substantial. It's because that is the part that will actually help you. Because Fulbright is the last phase. It's almost the last phase for you to get that master's degree, for you to get the PhD. But today, kids would do a diploma, higher diploma degree, and then they would pursue to do masters and then PhD, and then they would graduate and go out there and find out what they want to do or what they want to work. But I still like the idea of this stop, right moment, finish a degree, have a working experience, go find out what you really want to do, get things. Let yourself have the lived experience, the working experience, the failures, the success. So when you sit with the panel, you have a story to tell. What is your success story? What have you achieved so far? How accomplished are you up until this point? That story has to be strong. That is a 5 to 6 year story. So I was 33 when I applied. Okay. And most of the applicants were around in their early 30s. So there's a gap. And you have to really make count that particular gap count. Yeah.
Okay, so it's not something that you could just apply straight out of college, right?
No.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah. So I'll move on to the next question on considering the time that we have left. So I need to. Okay. So off the top of your head, name one of your favorite Malaysian documentary films that everyone in Malaysia ought to see.
Aku Mau Sekolah.
Aku Mau Sekolah.
By Putri Purnama. You can find it in the Freedom Film Festival website.
Okay.
It's about the undocumented stateless children who live there near the dump area. And it's funny you asked me the question because it's a short documentary, 20 minutes. I used that story for my students in my Principles of Broadcasting module to write a reflection on. And, I gave this assignment in April. So I was marking the assignment just about a month ago, I think about July, I was marking the paper. And the day I was marking the paper, we have a chat group among Freedom Film Festival, FFN. I got a news that the lead character, Ariel, the young boy, passed away of TB. Because an undocumented immigrant, you don't have that luxury of going to a medical, to seek a medical assistance. And you died. Your life didn't matter. And it was an awakening. It's almost a very grounding documentary for my students because they come from a very privileged background. Tailors have the reputation of attracting kind of well-off families and students. So they come from very sheltered, closed family background. So when they come and watch documentaries like Aku Mau Sekolah or Kamago, they have this, wow, I've been living in a bubble all along. And if it's not Aku Mau Sekolah, in my film studies class, there's one documentary that I was screened. That is my way of grounding my students, like leveling, to bring them to a level 0 before I bring them up. It's almost like sanitizing their mind, like forget all the privileges, all the, let me wake you up. It will be war dance about a school in Kampala that would go for a song competition. You have to watch the documentary by song. The fine couple made it, won an Oscar. So War Dance would be another documentary that I actually would screen just to level the class so I can build them up from there.
If I if I can reiterate the Malaysian documentary that you're talking about, it's called Aku Mau Sekolah by Putri Purnima. So for the audience out there, should you want to if you like to take a look at a documentary suggested by Indrani, you can take a look at that one. Yeah. Without further ado, I would just like to shift to Jinchi for a bit, because there are 2 questions from the floor and we'd like to address them. And that's Jinchi.
Yeah, thank you, Indrani and Vinod. Vinod has very interesting questions. He has more. So after my questions, please stay on, because there'll be more interesting sharing from there, yeah? So before we ask the questions from the floor to Indrani, let's have a reminder here for Taylor staff. Please remember to register in HRSS and also register your attendance here in the link that we will provide in the feed, yeah? Okay, now back to Indrani. The first question is from Mr. Philip Gan, yeah? Right, okay. So his question is, I'm not sure who he meant by they, but I'll just read you the question, all right? Do you think they will have to also prove themselves to their families they can stand on their own 2 feet and that their dreams are worth pursuing?
Yeah,
I suppose he meant by those people who tend to, break away from the norm.
I guess they would mean the females, right?
I think he refers to they as in the people that on the other side right now, the family, maybe. I think they have to. It's just that their fight is to raise their kids right. If he refers to the family, refers to the parents, they also, by raising their children conforming to the formula, that's what success should look like. My children are successful. It's their way of proving themselves to their family to redeem. Remember, every one of us utter failure. When you don't go into local university, when you don't get all A's in your paper, when you don't land a 5-figure income a month, you're just gone. Can't save you anymore. But you can when you raise the next generation to do exactly what you didn't do. It's their way, I think, to prove themselves to their family. But my parents, my mom and dad, they did differently. They conformed with me. They said, leave her alone. Let her decide her own story. Don't pressure her. I think we were pressured by you, thus we're pressuring her. We don't want to do that anymore because we lost years with her because of that. Because she didn't conform. She rebelled. And say, so they lost years with me. If they had stood by me and believed in me and just supported me, although I didn't have, there's no glimpses of success there, whatever you would consider success as, why would have made me happy? We would have been in the journey together for a long period of time, but they did join the journey though, much later. But, and I remember every screening, Jinshi, Vinod, Charles Vikram, my parents were there. They were my first audience. Every screening. And the last one that my father was in was last year, August, during Incarcerated Rhythms premiere. This is that was the last screening he was in, and yeah, I guess I did make them proud, but
I'm sure. Actually, I saw the pictures that you took with him, so that's really meaningful. And I think no matter what, however our paths are in the future or how we have gotten to a destination, whether or not our family have they been providing us the support that we thought we needed, or or something that we thought we didn't need, but they were, that they had been there. They're always part of our story. So yeah, I mean, like you said, at the end of the day, they did show up, although from the start it wasn't their cup of
It was
tea.
hard for them because they don't know. The thing is, they love you. They
I
they
think
were
that's all
hard
that
on you because they love you. They want you to be successful. They don't want you to make a mistake. Probably they did. And out of love, they fall for that pressure because in our eyes, success is when she goes to university. Success
that's
is
right.
when she gets that house, the job, the credit card, the debt, the PTP loan. That's success. But that's one narrative. If they had been exposed to multiple narrative of how people can be successful doing what they love doing, and sometimes it takes longer to be successful,
Yeah.
had they known, then they probably would have supported you earlier. So they really did out of love. And
And
it's
probably
sad.
their own experience as well, probably from
Yes.
their own experience as well, that they thought that this formula may work for my kid,
Yeah.
so
They
they
probably
it
know that independent filmmakers will never bring money home. You will constantly chasing grants and you're not able to pay pay your mortgage. And oh my gosh, it's going to suffer. Who's going to marry her? And I don't blame them. And it's just lack of multiple narratives, I think.
yeah.
So filmmakers don't make money here.
No,
Sorry, that's what I
filmmakers.
got on. Out of the entire session.
Yet to meet a filmmaker who are like Hollywood, Christopher Nolan or whoever.
Okay. Gigi, do we have another question?
Yes, in fact, we have two more. So I think I will move on to that question. Yeah, Indrani, thank you so much for answering Philip's
Philip,
question.
Philip, I'll take it up with Philip personally.
All right. We have one from Miss Siti Norzaini. All right. So the question is, Indrani, how did you take the challenge and courage to fight the fear of losing someone you love in order to pursue your dreams and believe in it?
Because I had more faith in them than they had in me. I had more faith in them that they will come around. They will come around one day because they got no choice. I'm their children. I'm their kid. I'm the daughter. They can't. Yeah. I just know one day I will make them proud. I had faith in me, and I had faith in them that they will take me back when I do return.
So,
I think more than they had in me. Yeah.
So self-confidence seems to be a prerequisite in being a rebel.
Self-confidence or ready to fail. Not
Ready to
afraid to fail. Not
Dare to
afraid
fail.
to make a mistake. Not afraid to. So I failed. So I fell. So what?
Dare to risk.
So what? Decide again, lah. Go back again, lah. Why must there be always success? Oh, great, Why must it be always rosy? What about all that uncharted path?
All right, thank you. I think you have a one-word, very strong answer there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope Siti Noizaini got her answer already. And the last question so far by Encik Abdul Razak Muhammad Kasim. What would you like to say to the young girls out there who are going through similar experience?
Good question.
Yeah.
This is where it's tricky because I don't give advice. I'm a horrible role model to begin with. I cannot tell you walk out of the house at the age of 20 and go live on your own and struggle. It's not the right thing to say, but my design worked for me. They really have to sit down, first of all, find out what they really want. So before they start rebelling, before they start become open troublemaker, I think internalizing what you really want to know and see if you can. Today, I think they stand more chances of getting that narrative through. Probably sit with your family and talk to them. Because I did that very late. I sat down and told them why I did what I did very late. Probably I lost about 8 years there before I did that. If they can just know what they really want, And even though if they're lost, but then if they know themselves and just sit down and see if they can send that message across and recruit your parents to come along on the journey. I think they have to go in a recruitment mode. Come on, come Papa, come Mama, just stay with me. I don't want to get married at 23. Can I buy time till about 29 or 28? Let me go travel the world. Let me go and see what I really want to do. Let me find out what degree I want to do, what masters I want to do. If my hobby really makes money or not, then I'll probably fall for the official career. I think try that approach. If it doesn't work, then go lah.
Okay. Some kind of advice that was, but okay.
I told you I was a horrible role model.
Okay. I think I want to bring this back to the films again. And so my next question would be, are there different genres in documentary filmmaking? And if so, which is yours?
Genre means you're already touching the official documentary 101 here. There's so many. I think when today is probably changing a bit, but thanks to Netflix and all the other format that's coming along. Before documentary became popular, when you mention documentary, the first thing comes to mind is Nat Geo, Discovery, Animal Planets. That's the grand narrative that the documentary phase. But then there are other kinds of storytelling, the other kind of documentary genres. My discovery of the genre that I love most goes all the way back to the beginning of documentary films in the 1920s when there was no sound. Symphony of Berlin, Rain, Fog of War. So I went back to the black and white documentary films. Chronicles of Summer, I think, is the most like the mother of all documentaries. If you can produce anything close to that, wow, because it has roots to history and ethnography. I think finding out the voice, I moved away from journalism, which has a very exploratory, very investigative documentary genre, to a more of poetic, storytelling, more essayists that really 100% believe in the visual to drive the narrative, and then you infuse the subject or the topic with it. So that's why you'll never find a narrative anymore in the films that I make. You won't find a hosted, an anchor who will drive, because you really believe that the visual drive the story. And let people tell their story using their own voice. Let them reflect and observe themselves while they're telling that story. So their truth and the lies, to me, are the truth, not the story itself. It's a story itself. So I have to go back to a lot of historical pieces to find out, okay, where are we at? Because genre, they transform, they change according to time. So for me, I think I'm very nostalgic about the earlier films, and I like that. And you really have to.
Sorry, does it have a name?
Sorry.
Does the type of film that you're referring to, the documentary film that you're referring to, does it have a name or a type?
It's observational cinema verite, direct cinema. There are different names to it. And just like a fiction film, you have Dogma 95, you have so many other branches.
Okay.
You have the same thing for documentary. So when I entered the world, that's why I did my master's MFA in documentary storytelling and production, because I dived into this world for 3 years, just learning about, because I know already I know documentary is my forte. So it was easy for me to even narrow down my master's then. So, and how did I know that? Because I had to practice for 6-7 years to find out what I really want.
Right.
And that's how I realized my niche is this.
Okay.
So it took me a while to find my voice.
Right. I mean, I since you mentioned it, you mentioned ethnography and visual sociology as well. previously you had mentioned visual sociology during the pre-conference interview, but you mentioned just now ethnography as well. So to come back to the question, in your pre-conference interview, so when you mentioned these two and now, what are they and how do they help you in the making of your documentaries? So how does these two, first of all, what is it and how does it help you?
You see, it's actually a very good story, The idea of seeing or idea of even gazing at a topic or issue, it's very complicated, As a person is seeing the topic, as a person is telling the story, you bring in a lot of your baggage into that. Who you are, what social background you have, what ethnicity you come from, what are the pressing issues in your mind, in your heart, in your mind, what are the challenges you faced in your life. So a lot of stories you explore, what you see in others, you see with all of this baggage behind you. So every story I explore, you'll find remnants of my past or my future or my unfulfilled dreams or my hope and wishes in there, right? So we bring so much into that. So for me, it makes absolutely no sense when I teach my television production students or whatever subject I teach them the technical aspect of filmmaking. It doesn't make sense to me. I always struggle with that. So when I discovered visual sociology, which is a branch of sociology and a branch of filmmaking come together, the meaning making of the images that you capture. When you point a camera, you really know what you're pointing at and why you're pointing at them, why that particular angle you're pointing at them. That's why the best storytellers often come from history background or sociology background or psychology background or even best is ethnography background. I mean, I'm talking about documentary here. So the art of seeing, and if you can actually remove all your prejudices, all your stereotypes, everything that you preconceived, and still see that image with a fresh eye, then you're aware of what you're seeing. And for me, that's very important because that's why my storytelling has evolved over a period of time. Why I give cameras in the hands of my protagonists is because I want them to look at themselves telling that story, because I want them to flip that.
Yeah.
They're telling me something, but I want them to tell to themselves the same story, see if it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I discovered visual sociology just very recently. It's a very new branch. And if I ever pursue PhD, this is the area that I'm really excited to explore, to bring in the sociology aspect of it to filmmaking. So as I'm learning, this is very important that we learn. We create, and then we learn again. So in stories that I tell, if somebody asks me advice, or if I want to be a filmmaker, what I want to do, I say, go study sociology, go study ethnography, go study something other than filmmaking, and then you learn the technicalities after. Because it's not how you pointed it, it's what to point it and knowing what you're pointing at and why you're pointing it.
Okay. We have about approximately 7 minutes left, so I have got to run through two more questions. And okay, so are you working or planning to work on a documentary presently? And if so, what is the topic or issue you are addressing?
I'm wrapping up one documentary. Actually, one is for tailors. I'll be finishing up in the last leg. It's a very mammoth project that we started last year, just polishing it and in a final approval stage right now. And then I have a film about a photographer from Penang, Pa Ismail Hashim, whose story that I filmed, Mara and I filmed in 2011. Khadija Khalid is a producer. We did it under Radical Films. It's a film that I was ready to shoot then with Adin Kuz being a storyteller. We filmed it, but then I think I wasn't ready to edit it. I wasn't ready to finish it. It had to take 10 years. It took me 10 years. Now I'm going back to the editing table and say, wow, now I'm ready to edit this film. Now I'm ready to put this together because I'm ready for Pa Ismail. I'm ready to tell his story.
Okay.
You see, it's a very deep story that as a filmmaker, I think only now that I'm ready to tell a story. Some stories, can wait. Sadly, they waited. And I guess it meant to be that by next year, hopefully, we'll get to release it. Yeah. I'm
Okay.
excited to go back and revisit the story from a completely different lens.
Yeah. I think that's really interesting. Sitting on a project for about 10 years, and then eventually, you realize that it's the right time for you to go back to it. In fact, it happens to me when I work on my personal projects. But this is not about me, so I'm just going to move on to the next question because I'm running out of time. So. Okay, so you mentioned that your life was by design and that it was not by happenstance or destiny or fate. Thus, by design, what is your next goal? What's left on that bucket list?
Up until now, life has been how I would like it to be. I was the main anchor. I was the main storyteller. I was a designer. I was in the design board. I did everything as how I wanted. But as I began to realize that life can throw you unexpected moments, unexpected events that now you have to kind of throw you off, erase everything you've planned, and you're now back at drawing board and think, wow, what do I do? For the first time, I really don't know what's going to happen. For the first time, I'm full of surprises. I don't know. I am no longer the sole writer of my narrative. So I'm with somebody amazing with me, or writing it together. So as we write this story, I don't know where this is going to go. And I guess I'll find out soon. So, but up until now, or up until a year ago, I think every year, whatever you did, it will lead to another. But what you're staring at that very moment, you have to do it full-heartedly. You have to do it right, without looking at future, without regretting what you've done in the past, but just being present. And if you're doing a degree, do it right. If you're doing an assignment, do it as like your final project that you're going to be hit by a bus tomorrow and you're going to die. You really have to take every day like that. I wake up every day thinking I will be hit by a bus and I'm going to die tomorrow. Therefore, I have to call my grandmother in the morning. I have to make sure I call my mom, finish everything. You procrastinate, you do. In the past, I did a lot of procrastination, but it didn't help the design. So I had to go back and really live like every day is your last. And that's the only way I was assuring that what's going to come tomorrow will come, because I have to still finish what I plan to do today. So, but right now, all up in the air.
Okay.
Don't
So now you're going to wing it.
I am going to wing it.
With that, I think we have one question from the floor, and Jinchi is going to ask it. Is it?
Yes, we do.
Okay, last one.
We have one from Encik Muhammad Izzuddin Zainuddin. Yeah. First of all, he said, good sharing, Indrani. Very good. And then his question is, you mentioned that let the video talk. Well, that is to capture the present. How do you capture the past? That's his question.
I think if you're talking about the past, it's always reflection, good reflection, and reflection that not go by scripted, reflection that, as I mentioned, as a storyteller, tool is one thing, storyteller is another, but I think the tool in the right person's hand can tell a powerful story. So think of a past as something I love. I think every biography story, I can't help but I have to go back to the past of every protagonist I explore, right? The way I do it is video diary. Second is let the camera roll for as long as they want and let them stare at it and recall. They're going to lie. They're going to tell you what you want to hear. And then they're going to tell you what they want to say. And eventually they come around and tell you the truth. So even in the past, when you reflect powerfully, will come through as new truth, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very interesting what cameras can do.
Yeah. The mask we wear, and how it falls off.
Layer by layer, when you peel, whatever you think the past is probably will come as a new news.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Onion model.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Indrani.
Thank you, Chinchi. Thank you, Vinod.
So with that, we come to the end of this particular session, and it was a really revealing and insightful session for, especially I think, for those people who are not from a similar background. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jinchi for the final say, and then we're going to wrap it up.
Thank you, Vinod, and thank you so much, Indrani, for making time, sharing with us such insightful information and about yourself.
Who knows? Hopefully.
Also, a big thanks to everyone who's here tonight with us. Yeah, and those questions have been great, and we've learned a lot how to be a better troublemaker like you. Yeah. So Vinod mentioned about the layers of the onion peeling off. So our next speaker for next month, we will go into our brains, okay, to understand how the brain works. So stay tuned with us for the next Troublemakers Assembly 3rd e-conference, all right, in September. We'll keep you updated. Anything else, guys? Mr. Charles, Mr. Vikram, Vinod?
Thank you and good night.
Thank you, beautiful Indrani. All right, good night.
Thank you so much.